Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order council meeting of Monday, June 3rd, 2024. Tonight, we are excited to announce Molly Raymond will be singing the national anthem. Molly is 13 years old and is in grade 8 at Our Lady of Fatima Catholic Elementary School. She is a lifelong resident of Grimsby and loves reading, creative writing, and of course, singing. She has been in several musical theater performances, including Mary Poppins, Junior, The Descendants, and The Big Bad Musical. Please join me in welcoming Molly, and all those that can, please rise for the singing of the national anthem. Welcome, Molly.
Our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, thou true north, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wide stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? Seeing none, can I have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradsey. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolved that the June 3rd, 2024 council meeting agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. First under delegations is John Dunstall from the BIA Financial Transition. John, please welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan and Council, and thank you again for allowing me to defer from your last meeting. It looked like it was going to be a long one, and what I wanted to say as a delegation could wait till tonight, so thank you very much. Let me introduce myself for the public. My name is John Dunstall. I have a small business in Grimsby, and I'm also a member of the BIA and have been since 2011. And I took particular interest when the board was elected back in 2022 to follow for the first number of meetings to see how the board was doing. And I felt after a few regular visits that the board was a good, dynamic group of people looking for the best interest of the BIA. Let me just introduce the board, not by their names, but by their business. So we have the 40 Public House, been in business for 7 or 8 years, being very successful. We have Teddy's Sports Bar, which is under new ownership and has been for a couple of years and seems to be doing well. And the owner of that establishment has been on the board for a second term. The Dutch Shop, and the gentleman that owns that, who is on the board, has now opened a second business. Mrs. Greenway, who has been well established for 6 or 7 years in our downtown. Station One, I got to think we're talking maybe 10, 12 years that business has been in our downtown. And then we have a fairly new board member, Spaceless, which is always good to have. We have Farmgate to your plate. I remember when I was on the chamber board, they were a business of the year many, many years ago, so they're well established. And why I wanted to point this out is our town is a small town when it comes to the downtown, and these businesses are vital to our future. You heard from the treasurer on the 6th of May when he and the chair came and presented why they wanted to take over the banking themselves. And I thought he did a very good job of explaining what this BIA was planning to do going forward. They've also wanted to hire an executive director, which was absent for the last 4 or 5 years, but previous to that, there was an executive director. And an executive director is a vital person to be on a board to move the work forward. The rest of the board are volunteers and they give much of themselves, but you need a paid employee, and that's very important. So I was somewhat dismayed when I saw what the requirements were for the board to transition to the this new banking process, and that was done on the May 6th meeting, and that was C-24-141. And why I say that is that there was 11 requirements. I've got to tell you, in speaking to the board as a member, they were very positive about it. In fact, they just had their annual general meeting on the 29th of May, and it was, I would say, a success, and happy to see that they're moving forward. This is a good group of people from a small business perspective, and I hope that we can all support them as they move forward, because they're going to take the BIA to another level, and it needs to happen because everything in our world is forever changing, and we need to be proactive in what we're doing. The only comment I wanted to make about the C-24-141 was number 11. It said, share monthly financial statements with the town staff. And I felt that that was just a little onerous when we're talking about a board that has a small budget. They're not going to be having a lot of activity every month, not going to be a lot of transactions. Maybe quarterly would be a better approach, but I just felt that that was a little over the top, shall we say, to have monthly statements by a board of volunteers that are just there trying to do the best they can. I appreciate everybody here trying to do what they see as best for the town, but this group of people are doing an awesome job. And I leave it at that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your presentation. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm a little perplexed as to why you're here, because we already had the I guess, the director of the BIA here. We had this discussion, so I'm a little kind of perplexed about why you're here. And I guess I have a couple questions that concern me about this, which if you've hired an executive director, you have a very small budget, you hired an executive director, you're going to be doing your own books now. So, you know, I don't know what you're paying an executive director, but let's say you've got a budget of 100,000. Part-time executive director, maybe you're giving them 30,000 at least. Another, say, 15,000 for someone to do your books. And then I understand that the garden club is no longer doing your flowers, which they used to do voluntarily. So if the whole point of the BIA, if your raison d'etre is beautification, well, one, it seems like you've just lost a lot of money to do that. You've lost a lot of, a big part of your budget, which was very small, so I'm not so sure that you need an executive director. And then basically the volunteers that were doing the beautification to help you, they've sort of been released from that commitment. So how are you going to carry out your mandate of beautification? And I was just looking today, someone asked me why there weren't flowers at Main and Christie, for instance. So maybe you could address some of those questions. Thank you.
Well, let me say, first of all, I'm not on the board, and I understand there was some kind of miscommunication with the Garden Club, but at the last meeting, the annual general meeting, they are working on memorandums of understanding so everybody's on the same page, because as time goes on, board members change, and things get lost in transition. To an executive director is an absolute necessity to operate, because we're talking 7 volunteers who have businesses of their own, who work hard as it is. And why I'm here is just purely out of support. I am not here representing the board itself. They do not know I'm here. I am here to speak.
So you're here and your board doesn't know you're here?
That is correct.
Well, that would concern me right off the top, to be honest. I mean, if you're here to talk about the board and they're not even aware that you're here. I'm surprised.
You're surprised that I'm here supporting them and what they're doing.
I'm not surprised that you would support them. I can understand that, but why you would come here without the board knowing, to me, that seems a little odd. I mean, if you come here to support them, but they don't even know you're coming, to me, that seems like a bit of a breakdown in communication there. At least your newly hired executive director, do they know?
Sorry?
Your newly hired executive director, are they aware that you're here?
No.
Okay.
None of them know that I am here. I'm here just throwing out my support as a member. And if you think there's something that's odd about it, that's your perspective, but I'm here throwing my support out to the DIA. I mean, there's been a lot of media attention, which I found to be somewhat excessive with what goes on at the DIA. And just let me say that people make mistakes. And so if the DIA has had some issues with making mistakes, we all do. And we pick up our bootstraps and we move on. But we need to show, from my perspective, a little more support for the BIA.
Councillor Davoli.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I do have a few questions for our delegation tonight.
Sure.
You mentioned that you have a business in this town, and so my question to you deals with the point that you raised about financial statements. Do you look at monthly financial statements in your own business?
No.
How often do you look at them?
Financial statements? Once a year.
Once a year.
Once a year.
I will say that that is not the recommended standard. And you mentioned that your experience goes back to 2011. I will share with you that my experience with the DIA goes back to 1986. both as the auditor and, of course, a member of the organization over those years, too. And I will tell you that in good financial management absolutely requires looking at your financial statements on a continuous basis, and even monthly, in my mind, is hardly enough. I do think that that is absolutely critical to any business, and I will share that advice with you for free.
Yeah, thank you. But I've been in the industry I'm in over 50 years. I know exactly what my sales are for every single month that is passed. I know what my profit is, and I don't require my bookkeeper to give me quarterly statements. That doesn't mean that I manage my business poorly because I don't do quarterly statements. And I suggested quarterly statements for the BIA because it's a volunteer board. I know my business intimately. I am there 7 days a week. So I don't think it's a good comparison.
And perhaps not, because this is a local area, this is a local board of the municipality, and these are public monies that are being
Absolutely.
contributed to this entity. So the board members would typically perhaps not have that level of intimate knowledge that you do with your business, which is why it's even more important in my mind. In my experience, which goes back quite a few years with this entity, I will say I have seen the highs and the lows of it. And having up-to-date financial information is critical to any business to really be able to understand it. And not just to a business, but to any not-for-profit or government entity, especially when we're dealing with other people's monies, right?
Yes.
And so I will just leave my comments there. Thank you.
Can I just say that as a member of the board on the Chamber of Commerce, always quarterly statements, but they weren't monthly. And yeah, that's good. But my business is my business. I answered you honestly, though.
All right, seeing no further questions, can I get a mover and seconder to receive the delegation? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Thank you, John. Have a good evening. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Howe, resolved that the delegation from John Dunstall be received. All in favor? That's carried. Next, we have Thomas Uda from SLBC presenting the non-core asset management plan. Thomas, please come to the podium. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan and Council. Thanks for having us here today. I'm going to be presenting about the town's 2024 asset management plan for non-core infrastructure. Also wait for the power. Oh, thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge town staff and their help over the past year in helping to develop this AM plan over the past year. So for an agenda today, we will be talking first just quickly about what is asset management in the first place, then talk about the town's progress in asset management per Ontario Regulation 588-17 requirements. And the main content of the presentation will be about the key outcomes of the AM plan related to the state of infrastructure of the assets, level of service, risk and life cycle strategy, and the financial strategy. And we'll touch upon next steps at the end. Next slide, please. So what is asset management? Essentially, you can think of it as doing the right activities on your assets at the right time. And there's kind of three main concepts in those three first bullets. The first is the cost. It costs money to manage your assets. The second is that they have to deliver some service level to the community. And the third is that there's some risk associated to them. So you can think about it personally as in, you own a car, you have to take it in for oil changes or do other activities to it, like replace the brake pads every few years. Those are the activities. They all cost money. And they're required to produce a reliable car over that time. And then if you decide to defer those activities or not do them at all, you're obviously taking on some risk. So there's the right time to do these activities at the right time. And that's really what asset management is for the town. That means applying those principles to all your infrastructure assets across the town. Next slide, please. So in terms of progress in asset management at the town, There's been continuous improvements over the past few years per OREG 58817 requirements. So in 2019, the town created its strategic asset management policy. In 2022, we worked with the town to complete the core asset management plan at that time, which covered roads, water, wastewater, and stormwater assets. Today, we're presenting the non-core asset management plan, which covers all the remaining town assets. And next year, per OREG requirements, there's another AM plan update that's required. And that one focuses on what they call proposed service levels. In that AM plan, you have to set targets for your service levels. The context of today's AM plan is maintaining your current service levels over the next 10 years. Next slide, please. So key outcomes of the AM plan, first is that it is an iterative process of continuous improvement. So this is the first AM plan for the town for non-core assets. Future updates to this AM plan will continue to improve in accuracy and completeness. Second main outcome is that we assess that the average asset condition of non-core infrastructure is good. So almost 90% are in fair or better condition, but that still means that continued investment is required to maintain your assets at this level. Third main outcome is that we did identify a financial gap for renewing your existing assets. That gap was estimated at approximately $1.5 million per year to maintain the state of good repair of your assets. The fourth main outcome is that there is an additional growth need, mainly due to a new Fire Station 3 and library expansion. They're currently in the 10-year capital plan, but they're identified as debt funded. The hope is that when the next DC study is updated, that perhaps some of those project costs could be associated and funded through development charges. Next slide, please. So state of infrastructure, one of the requirements of the regulation is to report on the town's value of assets. So the non-core asset portfolio is valued, estimated at $234.2 million replacement value. You can see the spread across the different asset areas in this table here. For example, facilities, the replacement value is $126 million. Next slide, please. In terms of the condition of your non-core assets, they are, again, the key outcome was that they are in overall good condition. Fair or better basically means the yellow, green, and dark green portions of that pie graph. That is almost 90%. What's not included in that percentage is the unknown. So there's about 10% of assets where we don't assess the condition. Mainly that's related to the natural assets. So things like woodlots, meadows. That's a very new area for asset management where cities are getting into even just tracking that data in terms of acreage and so on. So it's normal or typical that many municipalities don't have the condition rated for those items. The items in orange and red are the poor and very poor items, and currently we estimated that there's about 21 million of replacement value of those assets. Next slide, please. So the assets exist, they cost a certain amount of money, and they cost money to keep maintaining. And they're there to exist to support services that the town is providing to the community. At the highest level, that's the strategic priorities, kind of dictates that throughout the town. So those are the high quality of life, responsible and progressive growth, and collective prosperity. And in particular, this AM plan helps with that third aspect of affordability and being transparent in financial decision-making and showing the financial sustainability of the municipality. Next slide, please. So those are the top kind of strategic priorities and service levels. In terms of the AM plan, it covers more detailed service levels that support those higher level objectives. And we kind of look at it in three main buckets of capacity, function, and quality. Capacity service levels are things that really drive the need for new assets, so growth. So for example, tracking the number of residents per community center or the number of kilometers of urban destination trails. Those are the ones that have the winter control all year round. Tracking that helps identify where do you need to add more or new assets. Functional service levels really drive where you need to upgrade your existing assets. So for example, annual energy consumption per square meter or GHG emission reduction, that's a big initiative for many municipalities. Those relate to upgrades related to, say, HVAC efficiencies or adding solar panel energy and things like that. Another functional aspect is the percent of facilities meeting accessibility requirements. So those can drive needs for adding ramps and things that make facilities more accessible. The last category of service levels really have to do with the state of good repair and condition of your assets, and those drive your renewal and operations and maintenance activities on your assets. Next slide, please. Okay, so focusing on growth, this is one of the funding gaps that we identified. So we estimated that there's a $33.8 million need in growth assets over the next 10 years. You can see the spread here. That $24 million is for facilities, and that's directly related to the Fire Station 3 and library expansion that is currently shown as a gap because it's debt funded in the capital plan with the hopes that perhaps it will be DC funded when the next DC study is done. And there is $7.6 million in that middle column of funding that is already in the capital plan for growth. So the gap is that $26 million that's mainly identified as debt for those two facilities. And there's some vehicles associated to Fire Station 3 that are not currently in the capital plan at all. So generally, that's the synopsis for growth and the funding gap related to growth. Next slide. In terms of renewing existing assets, so this is just looking at existing assets and how much money is needed to sustain the current condition of those assets. We estimated that there's an average of $5.1 million needed each year. That's basically the black dotted line you could see there, showing at around that $5 million mark. It's just an average of those 10 bars that you can see across the 10-year forecast period, across the different service areas and asset categories. Next slide, please. So by spending that $5.1 million, basically results in the condition profile on the right-hand side of this PowerPoint slide. So on the right-hand side, the facility condition index, which is a way to track the condition of your facilities, that remains kind of stable in the very good state across the 10 years. And then the bottom right, your condition remains relatively good with the orange and red parts being relatively controlled. If you don't spend any money, that's what's happening on the left-hand side. Your facility condition index is going way up, which is bad for facilities. And then you can see the orange and red portions increasing obviously drastically over the 10 years if you don't invest in your assets over the next few years. Next slide. So that was the impact of spending that $5.1 million per year, which is in that first column. So that's what we call is the need to maintain your assets in a state of good repair. What's available in the 10-year capital plan is $3.6 million per year. So that results in a funding gap of $1.5 million a year on average. And the gap may actually be higher. I believe the capital plan results currently in decreased reserve levels. So if you wanted to maintain reserve levels, for example, the funding would not actually be $3.6 million dollars that's available. Next slide. This just brings a more holistic view in with the core assets, because obviously we're focusing just on the non-core assets and getting that through today, but we inflated the values from 2 years ago for the core assets. Again, that's the top part now, transportation, storm, water, and wastewater. The gap there is $3.4 million per year. That bottom half of this table is a repeat of the non-core that we just discussed of $1.5 million per year, but we just wanted to give a holistic picture of what's happening across the whole town. If you looked at all assets, the overall gap for state of good repair is about $4.9 million per year. Next slide, please. So managing this funding gap, this is typical across many municipalities across Ontario and Canada, that there is this funding gap that exists, is particularly for state of good repair. So there are things that can be considered, obviously, like through property tax increases, utilization of more debt, looking for more grant funding, or drawing down on reserves. This next point about changing the funding source is really related to core infrastructure, about the wastewater and developing a wastewater dedicated rate for user fees. The other option, again, also is to defer capital and renewal projects. And that aspect would lower your service level, but the point there would be to focus on lower risk assets of lower criticality, so that you're maximizing the use of the available funding that you do have on what is high risk and what is critical. Next slide. So next steps, again, this is a continuous improvement process. There are some gaps in data and so on. So one of the things is to continue to improve the knowledge of the replacement values of all your assets and the current condition of the assets. implement the maintenance management and enterprise asset management system, which is a software system to help track the inventories and condition and work orders of all your assets. And then third, there are a lot of studies and ongoing master plan updates that are hopefully going to be completed in the future. Those can be used to address and inform the service levels that should be incorporated into future AM plans. And again, the next AM plan is due in a year to tackle the proposed service levels. And last slide, thank you. So endorsement of this AM plan, really what we're talking about today is that endorsement means that council is adopting the general approach that we've described in this AM plan for non-core infrastructure. And we're not recommending any changes to the previously approved rates or levy budgets. The recommendations from this AM plan really are used to inform your annual capital budgeting process and operating budget process. And that concludes the presentation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Thomas. We will be taking questions during the staff report. So can I have a mover and seconder to receive? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the presentation from SLBC be received. All in favor? That's carried. And can I have a mover and seconder to get the non-core asset management plan staff report on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor Freg, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that report DPW 2414 non-core asset management plan dated June 3rd, 2024 be received. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Howe.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Is this fair to ask the gentleman a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Page 7, and trust me, this booklet helps to sleep. But on page 7, you in the pie, you refer to an unknown, and I have difficulty trying to grasp putting a value on an unknown. And I get it, I understand it. But if you were to back that unknown out, would that impact the gap at all or not? Because I think you're, and go to it, but I don't know how to
Sure. Through the mayor.
reconcile it.
Yeah, I believe that unknown, I'm not sure which, if it's the main pie chart that we were showing during the presentation.
Correct. page
It's
7.
mainly the natural assets, I believe, that don't have a condition assessed for them. So that is typical across many municipalities. So for example, a woodlot or a forested area, we've assessed a general value of restoration value, and that's included in the AM plan in terms of what value that would be if, for example, it needed to be restored. What we don't have is the condition. So we don't know if it's in very good or very poor condition just because the data is not available. So that's what's represented there. I don't think, so if the condition was known, then yes. So if those assets were in very poor condition, say a woodlot, then that would help inform any additional needs that might be needed to restore that area. So I agree with you, if the data was there, and we could actually know that it was in a certain condition, that would influence the needs. And that's where this is a continuous improvement sort of process. You don't have all the data right now, and that's typical. When that data is there, then you can decide, okay, do we need more money for addressing those additional needs?
Okay. If I can, Mayor, if I can, just one more comment. When you do go through the report, it justifies maintenance and taking care of what you've got, and putting an onus on us to make sure our fleets are in good repair, that our roads are in good repair. Because it's, it just illustrates it in probably much stronger words than, someone telling us or standing there that it pays off. But you showed it in numbers, so for that, I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So trying to get a handle on way that fleet is non-core. Now, is there any fleet that is considered core? Because a fire truck, obviously at $500,000 or more, is significantly different than, a vehicle that our bylaw officer uses and gets replaced every, 6 to 8 years because of the number of kilometers it has on it. Are those distinct when it comes to, is one core and the other one non-core, or would all fleet vehicles be considered, snow plows also, for example, large purchases that you might consider core rather than non-core because they're essential for the everyday workings of the municipality in the wintertime. How are those distinguished, or are they distinguished?
Through the mayor, so the nomenclature for the terminology of core and non-core is really coming from the Ontario regulation. And they've just defined core, whether it's right or wrong, as roads, water, wastewater, and stormwater. And they just said everything else is not that. So in the AM plan, we do talk about the criticality of the assets still, though. So even though all the assets in this AM plan are technically non-core per the regulation definition, we still have assets that are more critical than others. So yeah, the fleet that are for staff versus the ones that are fire trucks are more critical in the AM plan than others. So there's a consequence of failure table that we have in the AM plan that rates every asset on a 1 to 5. So the fire trucks would be rated a 5, very high consequence of failure, whereas a staff vehicle would be rated like a 1. So it is differentiated and considered differently in the AM plan, regardless if it's a non-core or core asset. That terminology is really just coming from the province. Yep.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thank you for the clarification, because that's a distinction that was unclear to me. Okay. Now, just like any other asset management plan, the purpose of it is to make sure that you maintain a standard and that you are putting money aside for the rainy day, or not even a rainy day, it's actually for the day-to-day, because if it's, so my question to you is, your report does not suggest a change to the levy, but $1.5 million a year in gap over a long period of time adds up pretty quickly. In the long term, what are the suggestions as far as, the levy is concerned? And and the other question I have for you was regarding the way that the assessment is done. Is it an assessment done based on current values or future replacement values, or kind of a combination of the both? And if you mentioned that, I apologize if I missed it, because
To the mayor, everything in the asset management plan is in current year dollar values. So if it's in 10 years, we've still stated the current year dollar value of it. That's similar to how the 10-year capital plan is set up. It's all in current year dollar values. In terms of the long-term financial strategies, yeah, I guess it's just not within the scope of the asset management plan to define how the town is going to actually, I guess that would be like a long-term financial planning document from, I would assume, the town finance department. So this is more an input of information to help inform that strategy, whatever that strategy may be. And on that slide, we just kind of gave general obvious things that could be considered, like the wastewater dedicated user rate. But deciding those things are kind of outside the scope of the AM plan. The AM plan is more about identifying what the gap is. The other piece is next year, the regulation requires to do an updated AM plan, which you set proposed service levels. And in that one, you get more refined in terms of deciding what service level do we actually want to provide. So you could, for example, decide that you're going to spend less than what's recommended here and not spend that extra $1.5 million a year and let certain assets get into worse condition. So for example, your facilities are in very good condition right now. There's potentially an option to look at less critical facilities and decide that those are okay to not renew exactly when a building condition assessment says it needs to be. So those decisions can be made again next year as well, which will help kind of inform additionally maybe a reduced gap, or it may not be $1.5 million a year if next year you decide to reduce some of the service levels. So that's an option at that point as well.
Councillor DeVoley.
Mayor Jordan, a few questions for our delegate, if I may. So I think I understood correctly, but do correct me if I'm wrong, that this report did not take the next step of looking at what we have in reserves for these gaps, correct?
That's correct,
Did I
yeah.
understand that correctly? Thank you. So that really will be left with us and with our finance department and all of our staff now to match this up to where we are at to determine what I will say is the true financial deficit, right, or
Yeah.
gap, right? Okay, that's my first question. My second question is, and I'm going to assume your firm is probably doing a number of these at the same time. And so, you know, like all neighbors, it's always interesting to know how our other neighbors are doing, right? Do you have any general comments or conclusions or observations that you could share with this council about how other municipal clients fared when they did this similar study?
Through the mayor, yeah, there's definitely a common thread here. So municipalities across Ontario and Canada are struggling with this, especially on the stated good repair part, with all the existing assets as aging infrastructure continues every year. This gap is going to just keep increasing. So obviously, older cities have an even greater backlog than newer cities. So that does come into play in terms of where you are on that backlog scale. So City of Toronto, for example, has a very big backlog. They're a much older city as well. So to answer your question, I guess the answer is yes. There's no municipality I can think of offhand that does not have a deficit in terms of the ones that I've personally worked on. So, yeah.
And related to that then, so the province mandated that municipalities in this province undertake these studies. Is this data going to be, are we mandated to share that with the province? And where do you think it's going with our friends in Toronto?
Through the mayor, so yes, this asset management plan has to be published on the website. So it is public once it's endorsed. And I believe it does, this, I don't know like how it actually gets emailed or communicated to the province that it's complete. But that would be done something on probably by the town. Someone at the town would be communicating that to the province that it's done, or perhaps this is the copy. But it does have to get onto the town website. In terms of Yasapa City of Toronto, I can't really comment on what their plans are for the deficit. I know it was in the news about what their deficit was, I think, a couple weeks back with their asset management plan. So I just know it's a very big dollar value, but I don't really know what their plan would be for addressing it.
Was the province of Ontario, did they require an asset management plan study of their own? Of their own assets?
The province?
Yes.
That's a good question. Alman, do you know offhand?
Sorry, through the mayor, provincial entities are not required to do asset management plans.
If you can come up to the microphone so the
On the same level.
people can hear.
Currently, the regulation is only required of municipalities across Ontario.
Which includes the both lower tier and higher tier. So somewhere like Niagara Region would need to do an AM plan, as well as Grimsby, obviously.
But as best we know, the province requires this of all the rest of us, but
Yes.
has not mandated it for themselves. This song sounds familiar.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is somewhat fluid, that if you were to do the estimate again in 2 years' time, some of those things that were good are still good. Some of those things that are, fair, stayed fair. So not everything is sort of sliding down, if I'm correct, right?
Yes, that's
So, and then possibly something that's good might, be hit with some kind of disaster and now fall into the fair category. So I just want to note that there is some fluidity to this, and that this doesn't mean that everything is sort of sliding downwards as time goes by, because some things might stay good for a long time and other things might move.
Yeah, through the
Am I
mayor,
correct?
yeah, that's correct. I guess what keeps them from sliding into the worst condition is that $5.1 million spend that's recommended each year, is to make sure that they don't continue to go on that path. But you're right, like assets will deteriorate over time, but some will stay in better condition maybe than expected. And that's the reason why the town staff do like building condition assessments every so many years. Bridge inspections, they're mandated to be done every 2 years. So these assets are regularly inspected. At least most of them are. Things like natural assets aren't, but where things are more mature in terms of asset management, they're regularly inspected so that you do get a updated snapshot in time every time you do an asset management plan update. Yep.
All right, seeing no further questions, thank you both for your presentation. Moved by Councillor Frake, seconded by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that report DPW 24-14 Non-Core Asset Management Plan, AMP, dated June 3rd, 2024, be received, and that Council approve the 2024 Asset Management Plan for Non-Core Infrastructure in accordance with the requirements of Ontario Regulation 588/17. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have Chair's reports. First up, Councillor DeVoley, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. The Finance Committee met on May 23rd, 2024, and after the usual approval of the agenda and so on and so forth, accepted receipt of the previous minutes from the advisory committee that reports to it and of its own committee minutes of the last meeting. There were no delegations or presentations, but an important point on the agenda that followed after that was the memo was received on the Peach King Center expansion cost update. And as each month goes along, of course, more work is being done on it. And the good news is, in summary, we are on budget. We will continue to monitor that on behalf of council. The next agenda item was that the Finance Committee approved the replacement of a bylaw vehicle for approximately $40,000, and that this would be funded from that department's equipment replacement reserve. That, of course, led into some discussion about whether our purchasing direction was looking at things from a more green lens. And so tonight I am here to also say that the Finance Committee put forth a resolution, and I will read it, that it's recommended that council direct staff to create or amend the purchasing policy to consider the purchase of hybrid vehicles before regular gasoline vehicles. Our purchasing policy does make reference to looking at things through a green lens. But certainly in the discussions from the committee, we said it's not just the capital cost, but it's also the ongoing maintenance of these vehicles that needs to be considered as well. And so we are recommending and asking for council's endorsement of that. The under other business, of course, the Finance Committee members are always interested in staying up to date and making sure they have as much information as possible. So with the coming of our new finance director as well, a digital financial policy binder is going to be put together of all the current financial policies so that we can all have reference to it. Also at this meeting, Councillor Howe was approved as vice chair of the Finance Committee meeting going forward. And we too had a brief update, although not nearly to the detail that we just had here tonight, on the non-core asset management plan. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor DeVoley. Up next, we have Councillor DeFlavio, Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So we had a delegation from residents on Governor's Road regarding parking restrictions and parking issues that are existing between McNabb Drive and Dorchester Drive on Governor's Road. You might recall that we passed a bylaw restricting parking on some of the adjacent roadways, which has caused concern about parking on this roadway and parking on both sides of the road and creating a dangerous situation on a road where there are no sidewalks. We had a good discussion about that. Staff was going to bring back a report We had discussion reports regarding parking restriction changes on Doran Avenue. Staff have been working with DeSantis Homes because Century Condos is coming soon. The construction of Century Condos is coming soon. And as a result of that construction, staff is recommending that parking be restricted on the south side of Doran as well as the north side of Doran. It's already restricted on one side of the street. In order to mitigate potential disruptions in that neighborhood, restricting parking will allow for a cleaner flow of traffic. There was an annual performance report regarding sanitary and stormwater systems. The municipality is required, because of the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks, to do an annual report highlighting key monitoring activities, maintenance programs, operational issues, efforts to reduce overflows, initiatives to improve system performance, things like spillover or wastewater going into stormwater management systems, things like that. Both systems are operating effectively, and staff is on it regularly. It's a regularly updated and monitored. There was a non-core asset management verbal update, which I don't think I need to tell people about because we had a pretty thorough report about it tonight. And finally, a memorandum regarding Nellis Road South and Dorchester Drive sidewalks. The municipality is is connecting the sidewalks through the neighborhood from along Nellis Road South and Dorchester Drive. It includes improvements to conditions of the road network, additional safety features, including resurfacing of Nellis Road South, Dorchester Drive, Nellis Road to Hedgelawn Drive, ditch realignments, improvements to curbing and grading and things like that. It's a fairly large project. That's coming soon. The project's in its final stages of design, and it's going out to tender. And as part of the final stages, staff is mailing out notices to residents to inform them about the work that's going on, to allow for feedback. So for the residents of that neighborhood, if you haven't received that, it should be coming soon. And the purpose of that mail out is to make sure that we get your feedback and we do the project in a manner that is in keeping with what the residents actually want on that street. That's it for me, Mayor, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Thank you, Councillor DeFlavio. Up next, we have Councillor Sharwa, Community Services Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So it was a fairly light meeting. We had a staff report come forward for an updated policy for the naming of municipal buildings, parks and buildings. We also saw another staff report on a more fulsome and updated report on rules and regulations for the parks. And fines attached to anyone that disregards them. A few updates just in general around Grimsby. On Saturday, May 4th, staff had a great morning for tree planting at the 40 Mile soccer field. Around 40 volunteers of all ages and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority team were able to plant 500 trees along the creek and in the bottom of Olive Street Hill area. The Casablanca Waterfront Park project is progressing well. It's on schedule for hopefully June, the end of June of this year, and it is still within budget. Spring programs have been relocated because of the renovation at the Peach King Arena. Many of the activities are happening at the Livingston Activity Center and other satellite facilities, yet they are still quite full, and we've even seen some new classes come forward. As I said, the Peach King Center, the construction has begun, and that will continue. With that has affected the splash pad. So the splash pad out here will be closed until at least early summer, just for safety. The Morrison Crescent Park is experiencing some improvements. Staff will be adding a swing set, benches, and pathways in the park, as well as park signage at the entrance. And staff are also exploring some additional tree plantings in the park. As you know, pickleball is quite popular in Grimsby, so in order to accommodate those that want to try it, staff have been very smart in making sure to open up an extra court at the tennis club. So usually the courts are there generally is a vacant court, so they're converting one temporarily for pickleball. And when that is ready, then they will announce it to the public, and it's first come, first serve, easy to access, so I'll keep you posted on that. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that the Happening in Grimsby is coming soon. The event runs over the course of 3 days from June 13th to 15th, and the event starts with the Thursday farmers market on downtown Main Street. Festivities continue into Friday with lunch on the lawn, live music, activities beginning at 5 p.m. downtown. Friday will feature a country twist with line dancing and additional family-friendly activities downtown with games and inflatables. Saturday features the street festival and vendor market from 10 till 5 on Main Street West and Coronation Park, and the fun continues with live music and entertainment on the main stage from 6 to 11. And that is all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, councilors. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the previous minutes?
I'd like to get something from the minutes.
All right.
I'd like to lift PW 24-024 from the Public Works Committee meeting of May 27th.
All right, that's so noted. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Frake? I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that resolution PW 24-024 from the Public Works Committee meeting of May 27th, 2024 be lifted for separate consideration. Councillor Vardy, do you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor. Some of you may recall that there've been ongoing parking issues in several areas around Nellis, Redwood, as well as McNabb, Governors, some related to the hospitals, some related to other issues. I think it's important to note that during this past year, several letters have gone from Public Works to the residents of these areas. So I'm not sure if there were 3 or 4 letters that have gone out, but the last letter that Governors received from the town said that the town was proposing to have no parking 9 to 4, 8 to 4, whatever it is that we have now on McNabb and the other streets, that there would be no parking either side, Monday to Friday, 9 and 4, I think, or 8 and 4. And so that is the last direction the people on Governors received from the town. So it was a letter that was, I don't know if it was mailed out or if it was just put in people's mailboxes, but that was the last communication from the town. Since that communication, it came to council, we had the discussion, and we agreed unanimously about certain parking restrictions on McNabb and Redwood and Nassau and Burgess and Braden. So we covered the whole area, although it was an oversight, and we added 2 streets in Ward 3 that were also impacted by the hospital parking situation. And, but somehow we forgot Governors. So what I would like to do is amend bylaw 1682 to prohibit parking on both sides of Governors between McNabb Drive and Dorchester Drive, Monday through Friday, between the hours of 7 and 4, which is what it is in the rest of that neighborhood. And I understand that that Public Works wants to do a kind of study of the area. I know other streets have been mentioned, but I think at this point, I think there has been an oversight, and it's a critical one, because that Governors comes right up from pretty much right up from the hospital. And it did have no parking at all between Main and McNabb. So I think we have to address this immediately, but we can go on with having a review at a later date, come back to Public Works. But for today, I think we've heard from the citizens of residents of Governors. They're quite concerned about safety and traffic flow. Again, it's an area with no sidewalks, and with the no parking in that area, it quite rightly will push parking up that road. So it really was our oversight not to include it. So given that we had said to them, this is what we're going to do, I think now it's something that we should take care of now and not wait for the future. In the future, we can do a further study of other areas, but for the time being, I think we have to take care of Governor's Road.
Thank you, Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. This issue, I think, first came to us in January of 2023, probably one of our first council meetings where we talked about Linwood. And ever since then, it keeps coming back, which tells me that our approach is not working, that something in this problem solving is not really solving it, because every other meeting almost, we come back and we've been adding another street to it. And I certainly understand the concerns of those residents, and I feel for them. Every day when I come into town, and I do probably come into town almost every day, I come down Central, I go down Baker, I drive down Main Street, I look down the Governors, I look down Nellis and so on, and sometimes purposely take detours just to see what's happening there. And I think I certainly understand the concerns of Governors, but what I'm seeing happening is that every time we ban parking on a certain street, we just move it to the other street. So now we see lots of cars parked on Baker. I see cars parked on Central, and the problem is just kind of growing. What we did learn at Public Works, though, is that there are transportation planning principles, and I'm not going to be able to explain them near as well as the folks here from Public Works, but that there are transportation and parking principles that can be lived with that tell us when we should have parking on one side, no sides, two sides, and so on. And I would really like to see us get ahead of this problem. And so I will say, I can live with extending it on farther down Governors, but inevitably what we're going to do tonight when we do that is we're going to push the problem to Dorchester, we're going to push it farther to Baker, we're going to push it back to Central. We're just going to keep moving it. So I think it is really, really, really important that we still ask staff to look at all of these streets. I understand that the transportation experts on our committee tell us that there's a sweet spot at which point in time people will actually pay for parking rather than walking a great distance, and that even transit companies use that to decide, when they'll have a transit stop and so on, right? So there are lots of things that I think we're probably not familiar with that our staff are. They are the experts on this, and when they are not, they know to go find even more experts. And I really think it's important that a report still come from our staff and that we address all of this to try and get ahead of this problem, because I do feel like this is just a similar step to what we did on the rest, and we're just going to be sitting here in a few months from now dealing with the same issue but with a different street name.
Thank you. Councillor DeFlavio and Councillor Bradson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, when we passed the bylaw previously that restricted parking on McNabb and other side streets, I believe I asked if Governor's was no parking, and I was told yes, but I might be mistaken. But either way, restricting parking on Governor's just makes sense. Whether we wait for the staff report or not, it's the road that ends at the hospital. It's the one where you would restrict parking before you restricted all the other ones. So I'm surprised it slipped through the cracks. So while I'm generally in favor of waiting for staff reports and then council makes a decision based on that report, and I think we're going to need one for future considerations without a doubt, I think that I agree with Councillor Vardy that this is a road where we kind of missed it in previous bylaws, and I think it needs to be dealt with immediately. That being said, I hope this is a short-term problem. I lived in Grimsby a long time, and parking near the hospital was never an issue before construction. I'm hoping that it won't be an issue after construction. It's primarily hospital staff and construction workers who are parking there and walking back and forth to their cars, and people who don't want to park or can't find parking at the hospital. So I don't think it's a long-term problem, but I think that we do need to find a solution. So I think that the work day hours, whether it's 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 or whatever we decide during the daytime, or similar to what's in the adjacent neighborhood, is appropriate for this neighborhood. But I do still think that for any subsequent decisions that we make, we do need to have a report from staff that does take into consideration the, as Councillor Davoli mentioned, when it comes to transportation, there are people who are willing to walk a certain amount of distance. Within that distance, that's where you'd want to restrict parking so that it becomes a hindrance makes it inconvenient for people to park, because they have to park so far away that they might as well park on site, or they might as well park in the provided parking. It blows my mind that there's a shuttle provided and parking provided off site, and people still choose not to use that. But I mean, in my many years of council have shown me that logic isn't always logical. So if we want to pass something tonight, I will second it or vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Like many of my fellow colleagues up here, I really disgruntled if we add Governor's Night and then 2 meetings from now we're talking about Hedgelaw or Colonial or Baker. I believe when we first had this conversation, I proposed a large zone that would actually stretch from parking zone to parking zone for the hospital, large enough that we wouldn't have to continue to repeat this. As much as I support no parking on Governors, I think it's definitely got to happen. I really don't want to be doing this time and time again. And I think, continuously repeating something that we know isn't going to solve the problem is the definition of insanity. So I think I'd like to go a step further, and I think we propose even going all the way to Park, or even all the way to Mountain View Church, where the other park and shuttle program is, temporarily until the hospital is completed.
Councillor Shaw.
Through Mayor Jordan, I don't need a report from staff. I support this as well. Respectfully for those councillors that have a different idea, you're not getting the same complaints from residents and the daily grievances that they have to deal with, and the safety concerns with their kids trying to walk around cars. So it isn't just, a nuisance, it's actually a safety issue as well. And I get those. Councillor Kristangi, who's not here today, she gets those as well. So, when people reach out to us about these things, that's what I'm looking for. I want to hear their feedback, and that's the most important thing to me. So I would support, again, same as Councillor Vardy, with Governors.
Councillor Davoli.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Could I ask Councillor Vardy if I could make an addendum or an adjustment to a friendly amendment for sure? And that we ask staff to report back to the Public Works Committee about the impact of implementing these prohibitive parking in the surrounding area. And I'll say, McNabb, Burgess, Redwood, Brookside, Sunnylee, like there's quite a, I'll say if you literally took, what is it? If you took a circle and drew it around the hospital, there is a certain area, and I would really like to have staff come back to us with a report on that and provide recommendations on how to mitigate some of the potential issues there. I will let staff decide on what that sweet spot is, but that would be my suggestion of an amendment on it.
Well, first you need to advise if you're acceptable of the friendly amendment.
Yeah, providing we include governors today, then I'm happy with the friendly amendment to look at the whole area. But I do want to note that in most areas where there is a hospital, there's no parking around that area. So you'll find it in lots of places. So especially when hospitals are sort of in residential areas, they do have parking restrictions. So I'm happy to get a report about this larger issue, providing we include governors tonight.
Just say which streets I had listed on my notes here. I had included McNabb, Burgess, Redwood, Brookside, Sunnylee, Braden, Nellis South, Kennedy, and Governors. And if I forgot any, by all means, add them in.
Councillor Howe.
Through you, Mayor, and I'm not sure if Brandon's on, but I think in conjunction with this, we need to, we should have got proactive about a year ago, but to set up a meeting between the hospital and the parking situation and the shuttle that they've got set up so we can, I don't think we've really got an understanding of exactly how it's supposed to be working. And nor do I think we're probably losing, or there's an opportunity to get the message out to the people that are there, that are reluctant to pay, and I think it's $30 a month to park their car at the school and take a shuttle back and forth. But we need to really know what's going on, and we're going to have to expect it for about another year and a half, I think, until all the hard work is done, and then it'll start to change. But somebody's got to sit down with them and let's find out exactly what they're doing and then how they're encouraging it.
All right, I see that Brandon's here. Brandon, did you want to comment on that?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if that's a question or a comment. I was just acknowledging I am in the room virtually, so I guess I can take a stab at answering that. So through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair. So yes, we have been in conversations with the hospital in terms of what how they're managing their parking. There's a number of lots that are currently in use in terms of trying to provide parking for both the contractors and their employees in close proximity with shuttle buses, and there's 2 different locations where that's present. I honestly, objectively, I think, hopefully, looking at, I think this is a matter of convenience. I'm seeing, in my observations, I've seen, in particular in the McNabb area, mostly I would say probably hospital staff in terms of, again, my observations and limited capacity is people in scrubs walking over, parking on McNabb. So I don't think it's it may be a matter of just not wanting to pay the fees or maybe the inconvenience. I'm not sure. I haven't stopped and asked them, but the fact that there is parking there and it's on a public roadway, easy, convenient for them to park for free. I think that's kind of what we're seeing. So I wouldn't classify this as the hospital not providing appropriate accommodation. I think it's just people taking advantage or of a convenience of on-street parking close to the hospital.
Thank you, Brandon. Councillor Sharwal.
Through Mayor Jordan, is the friendly amendment already accepted, or can you still decline the friendly amendment? Because I'd like to argue against it, mainly because the responses seem to be you're suggesting maybe open it up to Ward 3, which my residents, like I said, constantly call about this issue, and we've finally got it forward where we're dealing with the situation. Things have been normal, and now potentially we're opening this up again. And if you think that we're going to make these changes and we're not going to hear from the public, I will tell you that is not going to happen, because Ward 3 residents are very vocal, And I will come back and tell you exactly what that they've said, and I will advocate for them. So if you want to open that door again, it's not going to be pretty. So I would suggest if you could possibly take that amendment out and just go forward with the way we did it, then we can see where the votes are for that. Thank you.
Well, we have, with all due respect, we have a resolution here with a friendly amendment, so you're welcome to vote against that. So I think we've exhausted our discussion on this, so I'll read the resolution now. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frank. Resolved that Resolution PW 24-024 be amended to read as follows. That bylaw 1682 be amended for the next council meeting to prohibit parking on both sides of Governor's Road between McNabb Drive and Dorchester Drive, Monday to Friday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 4 p.m., and that staff report back to Public Works Committee about the impacts of implementing prohibited parking in the surrounding areas of McNabb, Burgess, Redwood, Brookside, Sunny Lee, Braden, Nellis, South, Kennedy, and Governors, and provide further recommendations to the Public Works Committee to mitigate potential issues resulting from these changes. So,
Mr. Mayor, that's not what I accepted as the amendment, just that if staff wanted to come back with a report about parking in general, I'm fine with that, but like Councillor Chauhan has said, I don't want to revisit this issue. This issue has come about because of the hospital at one end and other issues at the one end of McNabb and the other end of McNabb, or Redwood rather. So I'm happy with staff to come back with a general report on parking, but and because I agree that we've got parking issues all over this town that need to be addressed, and I'm happy to hear about how staff can address a lot of those issues, but making it specific, that was not my understanding it. Making it specific to that area, I don't agree. But for staff to come back about, these hot spots in certain areas, because I can think of a couple that are not hospital related. It wasn't me. Okay, so if you can amend that, if that's the amendment, that staff will come back with a report on parking issues in Grimsby, I'm fine with that, but not to review what we're doing here, because, like I said, I've heard from so many residents, about the issues there and about issues in other places as well, but they're quite different than what we've approved so far. So this, I think, really relates to the hospital. It's standard practice, and I'd like to, I'm fine with that amendment, if that's what you mean by an amendment.
all right, I think to reduce confusion, Councillor Davoli, your amendment reads as a resolution. We can vote on that separately if you have a seconder. Or if you want to amend your amendment, we can do that as well.
I hear you. And I truly don't mean to start singling out streets, because I'm also worried about Baker and Central and where all of this is going. So could we just say that we ask staff to come back with a report about parking in the vicinity of the hospital? And as I said, wherever, because what I really would like to see is staff help us get ahead of this problem, not backtrack, right? I would like to see their suggestions as to how we get ahead of this, so that we don't sit here 2 months from now hearing from the residents on Baker and Central and Dorchester. So I'd really like to just say for the surrounding area around the hospital. Is that general enough?
So, point of clarification, is this where we're voting to suspend the rules? Because I would have a point of order on that.
It's not suspending the rules, it's changing a friendly amendment to a resolution. Yeah, so I have moved by Councillor DeVoley, resolved that staff report back to Public Works Committee about the impacts of implementing prohibited parking in the vicinity of the hospital and provide further recommendations to the Public Works Committee to mitigate potential issues resulting from these changes. So we need a seconder for that. Councillor Howe seconding it. We can open up discussion on that now. Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. My friendly amendment's quite small, actually. Is just, I completely support making the change to governors tonight, but I think what we really need to do is look at the zone around the hospital. Like Councillor Vardy said, if you look to hospitals in other towns, there's always parking restrictions in those areas. And I really fear that by the time we solve this problem, the hospital's built and done. I think we add the one street tonight, but like also Councillor DeVoley said, we're going to be talking about this in 2 months on Baker, on Turnbridge, on Colonial. And then we really need to look at a hospital zone.
I think this resolution that's on the floor right now does cover that. It says implementing prohibited parking in the vicinity of the hospital and provide further recommendations to the Public Works Committee to mitigate potential issues resulting from these changes.
I just wanted to also add that we look at it for before and after construction. So once construction is done as well, we have a hospital parking zone.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not happy with that amendment. So could we just vote on?
It's not an amendment, it's a separate resolution, and then we'll vote on restricting parking on governors separately.
And that separately, okay, thank you.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan. Thank you. We've just heard from the Director of Public Works who said that this is a convenience issue. So people are just trying to save time and money, and they have shuttle parking, they have places that they can park. So I think we should stay firm with it and deal with it, and people can just park where they're allowed to park. That's just a convenience issue. And we shouldn't inconvenience the residents because of it.
All right, seeing no further questions, Councillor DeFlavio.
Sorry for belaboring this. I was going to let it go. I want to point out that other municipalities that restrict parking near the hospital quite often have short-term parking near the hospital. So in the long term, I think what our staff needs to do is evaluate. These roads are public roads. Although there are people that live on these roads, they are roads that are owned by the municipality and were paid for by all residents of the municipality, not just people who live on those streets. So while I agree with this as a solution in the short term to the parking issues at the hospital, I disagree that all parking should be restricted near the hospital. I think that in the long term, if you go near Hamilton General, Nora Henderson, or whatever, Juravinski now in Hamilton, there is both on-street parking in the form of metered parking. There is side streets where there's 1 hour or 2 hour parking. There are a variety of different parking options for people in addition to the paid parking at the hospital. I don't think the town of Grimsby should be completely restricting parking in this neighborhood long-term. But in the short term, I think it's important that we solve the problem that's being caused by the construction. So I hope that staff in the long run will revisit this after I'm gone and say, hey, it's an hour or two on these side streets is a reasonable amount. It does what you want it to do in keeping people from parking on both sides of the road or parking there long-term, but it also allows for flexibility for somebody who's just running into the hospital to visit somebody that's in there or dropping somebody off and has to go in and out, things like that, that on-site would require the full day parking or $8 or $10 parking. So I think the municipality has a responsibility to make public roads public. And So in the long term, I hope that this is not a long-term restriction, but I know that right now we are making it a long-term restriction. That's my 2 cents on the matter. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions, moved by Councillor Davoli, second by Councillor Howe, resolved that the staff report back to the Public Works Committee about the impacts of implementing prohibited parking in the vicinity of the hospital and provide further recommendations to Public Works Committee to mitigate potential issues resulting from these changes. Well, yeah, let's vote on e-scribe. And that's carried. All right, the other resolution is moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that Resolution PW 24-024 be amended to read as follows: that bylaw 1682 be amended for the next council meeting to prohibit parking on both sides of Governor's Road between McNabb Drive and Dorchester Drive, Monday to Friday, between the hours of 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. All right, may as well use the e-scribe again. And that's carried. All right, now we need a mover and seconder to approve the remainder of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the following minutes be approved. Council, May 21st, Finance Committee, May 23rd, Public Works Committee, May 27th, 2024, Community Services Committee, May 28th, 2024. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for the Green Committee's council endorsement package? Yeah. Councillor Davoli.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I would like to just make a few friendly amendments to this resolution. I know, that word. I think sometimes, we use words like direct and provide and so on, when really what we're doing is we may very well be directing the clerk to write to the Niagara Escarpment Commission, but to ask for information on what the Niagara Escarpment Commission is doing to address invasive species in Grimsby's escarpment area, because are we asking them about what they're doing throughout all the other municipalities, or no, really just through Grimsby's escarpment area, because that's all they have jurisdiction over, correct? And to consider a collaborative approach between the Niagara Escarpment Commission and the town of Grimsby in this area.
I think Councillor Vardy has a point of clarification.
That would be great.
Yeah, things blow from the escarpment. They come into Grimsby and then they grow here. So it's not just, we are concerned about what we do up there because of the effect it has down here as well. So I'm not, I'm not sure if I'm understanding correctly, but the reason we're concerned is because all of this is causing a bigger problem down below. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was the point of
Yes, I
clarification.
do agree
still
with
have
you.
the floor.
Yes, but I think when we ask the Niagara Escarpment Commission to provide information on what they are doing, they can only comment about what they're doing in their own area, right? Like, are they going to be commenting, are we asking them to comment about what they're doing outside of their mandated area? I don't think so, right? We're just asking them to tell us what they're doing there. And then the second step is to have a collaborative approach with them about between the town and the Niagara Escarpment Commission, which could then take it the next step.
If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, we're concerned about the part of the escarpment that is in Grimsby. So I'm not sure if that clarifies or if I'm confusing things more. Because when we say invasive species in Grimsby, in the Grimsby section of the Niagara Escarpment, if you want to say.
Yes.
I mean, we're concerned about the whole thing, but primarily what's blowing into us here down.
Yes, I guess the part that just said invasive species in Grimsby, but we're not asking them to comment about everything within the town of Grimsby, that's why I said within Grimsby's escarpment area, because that's all they could comment on, right, is what they're doing with the land that is under their control, right? And then to consider a collaborative approach between, I'll say, the NEC and the town of Grimsby in this matter. I think we actually are talking about the very same thing.
So I have the amended resolution, and I guess you can decide whether it's friendly or not. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor DeVoley. Resolved that the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee recommends that Council direct the clerk to write to the Niagara Escarpment Commission to provide information on what the Niagara Escarpment's what the Niagara Escarpment Commission is doing to address invasive species in Grimsby's Niagara Escarpment area, and two, consider a collaborative approach between the Niagara Escarpment Commission and the town of Grimsby in this area. All right, so everyone's happy about that. All right, so I read the resolution. Can we vote in favor of it or against it? All in favor? All right, that's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the board minutes? Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the following minutes be received. Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, May 15th, 2024. Committee of Adjustment, May 22nd, 2024. All in favor? That's carried. Now we move to announcements. I'd like to take a moment to announce that June is International Pride Month, an opportunity to celebrate the love, diversity, and connection of 2SL LGBTQ plus people in our communities. This morning, we had an opportunity to raise the pride flag for Pride Niagara. Councillor Vardy was there with myself, and we had a number of staff there and a number of citizens. They do an amazing job connecting and supporting residents across Niagara, and we are proud to have their flag raised at Town Hall. Pride is not confined to the month of June. Let us continue to celebrate the resilience of 2SL LGBTQ plus communities. During the month of June, we also recognize National Indigenous History Month. June 21st, honored as National Indigenous Peoples Day. We celebrate Indigenous cultures, heritage, and diversity while recognizing the resilience Indigenous peoples have shown throughout Canada's complex history. To commemorate these important dates, on Saturday, June 15th, the town invites everyone to the exhibition receptions of two-spirited artist Jason Berg at the Grimsby Public Art Gallery. June is also National Seniors Month. This is a month dedicated to recognizing the positive impact of older adults have had on our families, communities, and society. I would like to recognize the town's Age-Friendly Advisory Committee and Seniors Club. These groups of brilliant individuals help facilitate the active lifestyle for all seniors in Grimsby. And are there any other announcements? Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Mayor. And hopefully I speak on behalf of all council and probably a whole lot of people that were involved. But this past week, the town and through the planning department put on a charrette. And I never, ever thought of what a charrette was. It had never been explained to me. If somebody would have told me we'd be doing something like this, I'd be going, what? But it turned out more people than any public meeting ever did. It got more interest than any other public meeting ever has. There is no way that anybody can say, well, I didn't have a say, or I didn't have, or you're not transparent. Well, that will not fall, that'll fall on deaf ears for me, because they put it all out there. And I can't thank them enough. I can't thank the people that came and be involved on Thursday, on Main Street at the market, and the map that they had laid out on the floor, and to actually see kids involved and parents getting their kids involved in a planning exercise, fantastic. I mean, we just don't see it. I even got excited about planning, and I don't often do that. But it was a remarkable experience. The core team, and I'm going to read off a couple of names, obviously led by Harold, Maddie. Harold, if you're watching, man, you brought an idea into us that is aces, and thank you very, very much. And along with that, Sterling Group, Lauren Burkhart, Sabrup Sandhu, and Terry Donna Edwards. That's our core group, but there was probably 25 other people between volunteering, providing venues for us. It was just phenomenal. It's one that I've been talking about quite a bit, and to all of them, I thank you, and to all of the people that turned out and participated, thank you.
Councillor Frake.
Wow. I was going to say that. But you did so well. I was just going to commend the planning group as well. I mean, I attended there was 4 sessions actually. There was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I attended 2 of them. I did 2 of the tours. I couldn't attend the Thursday, Friday, but I heard that there was 150 plus people that showed up on Thursday evening. Sam Oosterhoff came to the event. The mayor was at the event. I think there's a couple of councillors there at the major event. I think you were there, Delight. But I must admit, it was really well organized. The tours were great. Sarah Sweeney did one of the tours, which was great. So they took us around the town and showed us all the hot spots and the heritage spots and how the town might look in the future. And I must commend Harold and his team immensely for all of the, I mean, it took a lot of work and a lot of manpower to put it all together. And I must admit, it was done with a lot of taste. So thank you to all of them. I'll leave it at that because I think Don covered most of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sharwa.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. So I just wanted to point out the Mountain View Lemonade Day that is coming up. It's June 8th, and this is a fantastic fundraising initiative to support the Family and Children's Services Niagara. The purpose of this annual fundraiser is to send kids to Summer Smiles Camp this summer, and the town of Grimsby will be hosting 2 lemonade stands in support of Family and Children's Services Niagara. So the two places where you can find us are, the first one I will be at, so come and chat with me if you have any issues and get some lemonade at the same time. That'll be Thursday, June the 6th from 3 till 7 p.m. at the Grimsby Farmers Market. Or you can also come and get some lemonade Friday, June 7th from 2 till 4 at the Grimsby Public Library. If you can't make it, then you can always click on the town's fundraising page and make a donation there. Thank you.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding the charrette, I want to tell you, it was so successful that my 18-year-old came home after going to the market and said he went in and he put his Post-its up. And so that goes to show you that it's reaching a demographic and an audience that we wouldn't normally reach. So that is terrific. The more we can do to engage people, the better. So well done, staff and everybody involved. I wanted to give a shout out. The Grimsby Authors Series, the final event for this year was this past Friday night at the library. Library staff and volunteers have done an incredible job over the years. The fall has already been announced. The tickets haven't been on sale yet, but some of the authors include Jeannie Becker, who you might remember from City TV, is coming in the fall. There's going to be some cool and eclectic authors coming in the fall. I particularly wanted to thank Ken Boychuk. For those who have attended the Authors Series over the years, Ken has provided introductions for authors from all over Canada for years now. He's been a volunteer for as long as I have, since the beginning in 2002, except he actually does a lot more. I just go and pour wine or stack chairs, but Ken prepares these incredible, detailed presentations on every author, has questions prepared, does a background on the authors, and every author has the same thing to say about Ken, and that is, I wish I could have him follow me and do the introduction everywhere, because his introductions are always so spectacular. Ken announced that he's going to be retiring from the Authors Series this year and won't be coming. He'll be back as a visitor and to watch, but won't be part of the group anymore that prepares. I just wanted to especially thank Ken for all the work he's done over the 22 years of his involvement. I remember back to when it was the Grimsby Pump House Authors Series, when Roberta Bondar came and Nino Ricci came to the Pump House on cold nights, and there were 30 or 40 people, and it's grown to this thing where authors from all over Canada now ask to come to Grimsby because they know the kind of reception they're going to get. These are authors that go to Authors Series or authors events in Toronto and get 20 or 30 people, and then come to Grimsby and see 200 engaged residents with questions in front of them that want to learn more about their novels. It's just an incredible event, so thank you to all involved, but especially thank you to Ken Boychuk for all of your hard work over the years. Thanks, Mayor.
Next, we have Councillor Shawwa's notice of motion from last meeting regarding a vacant unit tax. Councillor Shawwa has moved it. We need a seconder. Councillor DeFlavio. Moved by Councillor Shawwa, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Whereas the Town of Grimsby Council 2022 to 2026 identified high quality of life as a strategic priority, and whereas the Town of Grimsby recognizes the pressing need to address housing affordability and availability within our community, and whereas neighboring municipalities such as Hamilton have successfully implemented measures to address the issue of vacant properties through the introduction of a vacant unit tax, and whereas ensuring housing availability and affordability is a priority for the well-being and prosperity of the community, therefore be it resolved that the Town of Grimsby directs municipal staff to conduct a thorough review of the implementation of a vacant unit tax similar to that of Hamilton or another neighboring municipality, as a means to encourage the efficient use of residential properties and to alleviate housing pressures within our communities. The review will include the implementation process and potential impacts of a vacant unit tax within the context of Grimsby, including but not limited to legal considerations, administrative requirements, and potential revenue generation. Present the review to the Town of the Grimsby Council meeting on Monday, July 8th for adoption. Questions or comments? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Councillor Schwa, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Jordan. So it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm obviously looking for some kind of assistance to help families that are in need of, and it doesn't have to be families, it could be just anybody that is in a precarious situation and can't find housing right now. And many of these units in Grimsby are just sitting vacant. We have the Airbnbs that are another issue, but there are some that are just sitting there completely unused, while they could be rented by a family in the meantime. So this is just looking at what our options are and asking for a report and seeing if there's anything that we can do to help people find housing.
I just have a question to ask you, Councillor Sherwa. Do you know if the lower tier municipality even has the authority to implement this?
I do not know, so that is why we will get those answers from staff.
Councillor Bradzi.
This falls under the upper tier's responsibility. But other than that, I'm just kind of curious to where these vacant houses are. I'm not aware of a lot of vacant units in Grimsby. I think we have the opposite problem. I think we need more units, to be honest with you. But it is also the upper tier.
Just in response to that, through Mayor Jordan, there are several, especially in, I see them in Ward 3, and actually even just in one of our Facebook groups, somebody had pointed out there were 5 in their area as well. One across the street from them and 5 like very close. And she had said that they were not used for anything. They were sitting there vacant. So if you'd like a list, I can go around, drive around Grimsby and find them for you.
If you'd like to prepare it, I'd certainly look at it. But even if the lower tier was capable of doing this, I think the costs associated with administering would far outweigh the revenue brought in. So I think for that reason, it would be something that I wouldn't even want to pursue. But I think there's really no point in debating this. It's an upper tier responsibility. And yeah, I think if you really want, this is something you want to pursue, you should be advocating at the region for this because it has no business here and therefore is redundant.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I don't know what Councillor Sherwa based this on because I'm really not aware of too many vacant properties in Grimsby. I did, however, do a little bit of research. There's 3 municipalities in the whole of Ontario, 444 municipalities that have embarked on this venture: Ottawa, Hamilton, and Toronto. And that it wasn't an easy task for them to put this in place, to say the least. The cost was phenomenal. You spoke about Hamilton. First of all, if you're a resident, you have to self-declare. Every resident in the community has to self-declare whether they have vacancies or not. If they don't, they get penalized. That has to be policed. Hamilton, it cost Hamilton $2.6 million over a period of a year to put this process in place. They had to hire 16 new full-time staff to make it work. And the ongoing cost was $2.2 million a year. And I don't even know if they're breaking even, to be very honest with you. It's a two-tier process. You know, the number of staff you'd have to hire in Grimsby, I don't know what that number is, but I'm sure it would be big. In Toronto, they went through a similar process. They had to double their staff in that particular department in order to make this work. And they had to reverse 62,000 vacant homes after they had put them in place because people had appealed, complained. There was incorrect invoicing and a whole host of other things. This is a really complicated process, and I don't know if we have a vacant unit issue in Grimsby. I'm not aware of it in my ward. And I can go through what happened in Ottawa as well. It's very similar to the other two, Hamilton and Toronto. Most of the other municipalities in Ontario are avoiding to do this because it's too complicated and it's labor intensive to make it work and police it. So I certainly would not be in favor of doing this. And I believe it is something that has to come from the region. It has to come from a top upper tier level as well. So I don't think I could go along with this. I just couldn't endorse it after doing my research. I have other notes, but I'll let someone else do some talking. Thank you.
Councillor Howe, then Councillor Davoli.
Through you, Chair. Much like Councillor Frake and Councillor Radzi. I don't see a problem. Now, I see problems, but not with vacant homes or boarded up or just not used. I haven't seen any around my area anyways. And thus I really can't support it. But should this go through, what is really would have to change is the idea that the report would be back July 8th. Whatever is being asked, that ask is a big order of work with a lot of time, and we're talking legal and all that, some expense. But did it have to be back into probably September? If they could even pull it off in that time, because I believe that Hamilton took quite a while to try to accommodate 1 year. So, but that's mine.
Councillor DeVoldy.
Sorry, wasn't sure my mic was on. Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I do echo the comments of my fellow councillors, and I won't repeat them again. Instead, I'll share something that has not been shared yet. And I have in front of me a report from that was published by John Oakey, and that name probably won't mean anything to most of you, but he is the Vice President of Taxation for CP Canada. And he was commenting and writing in this article about a similar tax, except it's the federal one, and it's called the underused housing tax. And let me, if I could just read some excerpts from it. So they estimate that 45,000 units are vacant or underused across Canada, and that the federal tax that they have put on, 30,000 of those would be subject to the tax. But now let's talk about something, other facts that are interesting to know. So he mentions the administrative burden on the CRA, so never mind the administrative burden on all of us. But he mentioned a couple of interesting facts here. He said, even if the federal tax was successful, and it has been in place since 2022, even if it was successful in moving every one of the 30,000 subject vacant homes onto the market, and we're talking all of Canada, it would increase our housing stock by less than a fifth of 1%. CMHC recently estimated that the country actually needs 3.5 million homes by 2030, and that this would work out to about 48,600 homes per month. So my concern, and to use a well-known saying, which I will probably now missay, is sometimes I think when, it's good to try and solve problems, for sure, and we know that housing is one of them. In this particular instance, I don't think the town of Grimsby should be leading this. I think we need to be careful, because sometimes when you own a hammer, everything you see is a nail, and you have to be careful to not go down that road. Yes, there is a problem, but this particular nail is not one that we should be applying our hammer to. And I will say that instead, I think we need to continue to work on our short-term rental bylaw, and that may actually ease it in a more meaningful way.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I appreciate the councillor's intent of wanting to address the housing shortage that is across Ontario, and including Grimsby. If I look at, say, Tarbert Construction, the homes aren't built yet, but they're all sold. If I look at Century Condos, which hasn't been built yet, but I think that all but 2 units have been sold. And when I think about the rental market, my understanding is if I'm looking at the Wolverton, they've received inquiries that would fill 80% of the building. And again, it's not been built. So I think our problem is not so much empty units, but not having enough units and enough variety, to address the kind of, the varying needs from sort of lower income to average income. So I'm worried that this would be a lot of work for very little return, and I'd rather see us spend our resources helping to get those homes built that, are already on the books. We've got a huge development coming down by the water with, I don't know how many buildings, I can't remember if it's 10 or 11 again, Casablanca, we got 2 more buildings coming online there. So I just don't think it's our problem. I think we have a different problem, which is lack of supply. Yeah. So I think we should direct our efforts to try to encourage that supply. So, I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor Charwa.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. Respectfully, I'm going to just make a few objections to these. So first of all, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not looking for the complicated solution here. So I've been following this for quite some time, recognize that we are not even close to the size of Toronto or Hamilton or Ottawa. So I'm looking at best practices. So anything that is painless, and I'm talking about the units that have sat there for years with nobody in them, because there are some. I know them in our ward. Those are the ones I'm talking about. And it's not a matter of hiring anybody to police them. It's a matter of if it's a one-time thing where you find these houses, and when the bylaw officer drives by and notice that something hasn't, been corrected, then maybe you deal with it. It's not a matter of, having somebody come and enforce it on an ongoing basis. So the costs, that we're not inventing something new, right? There are other models that we can look at, and I do agree that there have been challenges, because I have followed it and I have noticed that they haven't quite figured it out. But I'm just looking for something very, very simple to help some families get into houses that have been there parked for years. That's all I'm looking for. And it's not a matter of trying to generate revenue. That's obviously, this would be a loss if that was the case. This is just to help a few families maybe get some rental housing in Grimsby. That's it.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. With all due respect, I think 4 or 5 houses is not worthy of bringing this motion forward. It would have been better suited as an email to staff or the planning committee. I haven't seen one municipality that has had success and gained anything positive from this. If you're looking for something that's not overly taxing, then this is absolutely not what you're describing. Can we call a question on this? I don't think we need to debate this anymore, to be honest with you.
All right, everyone's commented and I've read the resolution. Why don't we just vote on e-scribe? And that's defeated. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the correspondence? Moved by Councillor Bradzi, seconded by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, seconded by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the following correspondence be received. Integrity Commissioners 2023-2024 Annual Report. Niagara Region reaffirming Niagara Region's commitment to expansion of all-day two-way GO train service. Town of Fort Erie request for regional support regarding continuation of urgent care operation in Fort Erie and Port Colborne.
I'd like to lift the one for endorsement for Halton Hills Niagara Escarpment Commission enforcement.
It's not on here, so.
It is. 17.5.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but it's separate on what, you didn't read it, right?
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, so
Okay.
it's separate. So-
Okay.
So I've read the resolution. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for Good Citizenship Day? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradzi. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradzi. Whereas good citizenship enhances and enriches the lives of all members of our community, and whereas acts of good citizenship affect every aspect of life in Grimsby, including social problems, education, creativity, and community livability. And whereas in 1998, the Brandy Elliott Education Projects was created in Brandy Elliott's memory to inspire youth to contribute to society. Throughout her short life, Brandy demonstrated that young people can make a difference by contributing to the town of Grimsby, the nation, and the world in significant ways. Whereas the Brandy Elliott Education Projects is dedicated to assisting children and youth to actualize their individual potential while fostering a spirit of service to society. And whereas the mayor, town council members, and all residents in the town of Grimsby are encouraged to make a difference no matter how great or how small, let us use our rich cultural diversity, our talents, and wisdom to join in a collective spirit of service and make a difference in the community that is so meaningful to us. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Jeff Jordan, do proclaim June 7th, 2024 as Good Citizenship Day and urge Grimsby residents to participate and to celebrate our strong social fabric created through good citizenship. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Frake has requested to endorse the Town of Halton Hills resolution regarding Niagara Escarpments enforcement. I'll have Councillor Charwa as the seconder.
Sorry, I just did that before Councillor Frick.
Councillor Frake came to the clerk and asked to do it in advance. So I'll let you to be the seconder, Councillor Charwa.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Frake, seconded by Councillor Charwa. Resolved that the correspondence from the Town of Halton Hills regarding Niagara Escarpment enforcement be received and endorsed. All in favor? That's carried. It's done. Yeah, we're not going to go back. No redos. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the bylaws? Councillor Bradzi and Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 24-43 to 24-45 inclusive, and that the same be read the first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Next council meeting is scheduled for July 8th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. Now we move into closed session. Can I have a mover and seconder to move into closed session to discuss the Peach King Center expansion sponsorship campaign?
Can I just get a point of clarification of why this is enclosed?
About to read the reason.
I'm going to read the reason now. No, it'll be read and open as to why we're moving into closed.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right, so do you want to move that then? All right. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that council proceed to closed session under section 2392K of the Municipal Act, where a closed meeting is held if the subject matter being considered is a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried out or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. All in favor to go into closed? All right, that's carried. Thank you, everyone. It'll take a few minutes to... Yeah, we'll have a 5-minute break as we clear the chamber, and we'll go back into closed. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We're now in open session again. Can I have a mover and seconder for the closed session direction? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that Council approve the sponsorship campaign strategy report and the staff be directed to proceed with the campaign, including the potential naming rights for the Peach King Center building. All in favor? That's carried. Can I get a mover and seconder for confirming bylaws? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor DeVoli. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 24-46 and that same be read a first time, considered and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Good night, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.